Hi everybody, John Randall here, and today I just want to talk about an aspect of preparing for a self-rescue. With our old Mistral boards, we got these sliding mast tracks, right? And one of the key areas where things break is this little plastic car in here, especially because in most cases they're about 40 years old. If you recall, with the Mistral system, we have these fancy little mast bases that clip into that little carrier, and it locks around, and it actually works really nicely. But after about 40 years of use, you can imagine some of this plastic is getting a little bit worn, and it's the one area where your system is most likely to fail. So what I've done about it is come up with this idea where I have a plate that I can put into my mast track, and I actually carry a spare universal joint like this. Now there's a couple of things about this. This is actually a Chinook one, and it's got a M8 thread, 45mm thread that's been screwed in, and then it's got the Euro pin attachment on the top, which I've also put on it. And this I can carry in my life jacket, or I can just sort of carry it in my pocket, or even attach it to my boom if I want to just keep it out of the way. And the thing about this, unlike my normal universal joints, which are these guys, which I've made myself, so using the traditional Mistral mast base piece here, and then the old Boge joint and the Euro pin with a safety strap in case the rubber bit breaks. The thing about these is that if that little track breaks on the water, and now my rig is lying in the water and I'm sitting on my board, if I've got a replacement one of these Boge joints, it's going to be really hard because they don't bend very well, and I don't particularly want to climb in the water and try and tip my board over and attach things. It's not good. But with these mechanical ones, I can actually have this with me, and with my little plate that I've made, I can attach it on the water into my mast track, and I can bend the whole thing all the way over like that, and then attach my my mast. And I always use these with all my Mistrals. I use these Euro pin mast bases. This is actually a simmer style one, but look, they're all the same. But I've standardized all of my mast bases so that I can then just attach that on the water. So let's have a look at the parts and how to do it. So this bit, if you're going to do the mechanical one, which I highly suggest, because as I said, you don't want to be trying to bend one of the other ones while you're sitting on your board or in the water. This is all Chinook stuff you can buy. It's probably equates to about, $45 US by the time you get all the bits. The other part you've got to make yourself. So here's one I've made, and it's just a piece of copper. It's a piece of brass. I bought it from AliExpress. It came in a sheet, and then I just cut it out. And the actual size, and I have one of these actually mounted on each of my boards. I've got 5 Mistral boards. The size, for those of you who want to make one the same way, the width of it, if you want to think of the width, is, and it's the most important dimension, is about 31mm, and the length, less important, is about 63mm. You can kind of make the length whatever you want. The trick is the width has to be something, unless you want to pull your mast track out and rebuild everything, you want to be able to slot it into the mast track like this and sort of manipulate it enough so you can get it to sit up flat like that, right? Otherwise you've got to pull your mast track apart and try and slide it all in that. So that's why I kind of made my own, because the commercial ones that you can buy are actually too big to put in without pulling your mast track apart. So I have these sitting in my board the whole time. I just have it right up at the pedal end, so the end that's closest to the center of the board. And because I want this to be able to sit up, so if I do have to do things while I'm sitting on my board, I want to be able to screw this in. What I do is I have a little piece of foam like this, and I just have this sitting permanently inside the mast track like that. It's cut to the same size as the little piece of brass here. I put my piece of brass in. Sort of hard to hold all this and show you, but so I've got my little bit of brass in here and I'm kind of manipulating it. This is the tricky part. I sort of push down on my foam, slide the little brass piece over the top. Right, so on my boards, that's what I have. It means, yes, I can't slide this this thing all the way up to the very end. I don't really care about that. It's only what, 2 inches. But now that just sits in my board. Hopefully I never have to use it, but if I do have to use it, I grab my mechanical universal joint and I just simply screw it in there. And I can do that on the water. I can be sitting on my board. I don't have to be lying in the water or anything nasty like that. I'll actually put this one all the way in. Remember, this is not for everyday sailing. This is something, it's just for emergency. Okay, so there it is, nice and solid. Now sitting on my board, I can connect my universal joint. I can get this into, my mast base. I can pull the one out that is broken, or is, at least this aspect of it is broken. And then I plug in my new one and I'm good to go, and I can do that nice and easily. So the last part of this, hopefully I'm explaining this okay, is what about how did I actually make the little piece of the brass, the insert? Well, I've already given you the dimensions. So the last part is just the hole in the middle. I just centered a hole, used a little drill about 2 mil just to get a starting hole like that. And then because I'm doing an M8 thread, that's the size of these pins, that's the size of the piece that is in the bottom of my universal joint here. Just get it out. This is a metric 8mm thread. There we go. That bit here. And by these studs, they're 45mm long, and they're M8s, they're an 8mm thread. So I start off by putting a little hole. I'm going to move the camera down so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I've got my little brass piece in here. I've already put a centering hole in. Now I've got my drill here, just a simple hand drill, and I've got a 6.8mm drill. Okay, I'm going to end up putting an 8mm thread in, but I actually drill a hole that's only 6.8mm. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, and then I've got a tap. So this is a little hand tap set that I got from AliExpress, and I actually bought a couple of metric 8 taps. This is what they look like. I've already got one set up in the tool, and I just put this in the hole that I've drilled, and then just gently get it going. Feel it begin to grip, and then just screw it through. There we go. Trying to keep everything as straight as possible. Really simple. Okay, take that out. As easy as that. Now I've got something that looks a bit like this. And I can screw, just to show you, screw that on, and we are good to go. And remember, this can be inserted, this plate, I'm just going to move the camera up. This plate can be inserted into my mast track permanently, and I don't have to remove the mast track because I've made it just the right width that I can get it down on an angle, and then I can pull it up flat. But to keep it so it doesn't just drop down to the bottom of my mast track, which would be hard when I'm trying to, you know, screw it all in, I just have a little piece of foam that I just insert through there. And if you have a look at this one, I think you might be able to see that's the brass piece, and under here is where that foam is, and it just holds the brass piece up at the top of the track there. So something to think about. As I say, you know, you can't prepare for everything. If your boom breaks, maybe you can flip it over and use the side that's still working to get home. If your mast breaks, depending on how it breaks, you might be able to still sail it back. If your universal joint breaks, the actual rubber piece, well, as long as you've got one of these safety straps around there, you don't have a problem. You should be able to still get back in. You're not likely to break your mast extension. And of course, you know, some of this stuff doesn't apply necessarily. If you're out in super high winds, in heavy surf and things like that, and you're sailing 40-year-old equipment, well, okay, chances are something bad's going to happen, and you're just going to have to deal with it. You're probably not going to be able to sit on your Mistral hookkeeper or whatever and be messing around like what I've had. But with the longboards, with the things like the Mistral Takeoff and the Maui and the Garter and the Competition and the Malibu, this is an appropriate approach to carry something super safe. And for me, given my age and given I sail by myself most of the time and I'm sailing in mainly offshore conditions, the one thing I really would have trouble dealing with is if this little car broke, and it is a problem that I've seen lots of people have. Anyway, I hope this is useful. Oh, last thing, I didn't actually mention how thick this piece of brass is. You can buy these commercially made, as I said, but you can't really put them in. You need to pull your mast track out, pull the whole thing apart and slide it in. So that's why I made my own. And the commercial ones are actually quite a bit thicker. This one is only, where's my tool? This piece of brass is only about 2 millimeters thick, right? So it's not very thick. It's not really suitable to be using instead of the main system here, right? It is just a rescue thing. It's to handle a situation where my sail broke or my system breaks when I'm, say, out in deeper water. I turn everything around and I put this in, I transition over to the new universal joint, get everything connected, I get the sail up and I go straight for the shore. I'm not planning on going out and sailing backwards and forwards using this. Anyway, enjoy your sailing. Look forward to seeing you more on classic windsurfing.